Okay, so I think you just sort of seeded what we're going to ask the alumni for next.
There you go.
Okay, well, and so thank you for joining us. We're continuing with the seminar series, and we're fortunate to have with us Mr. Michael Scheer, who is an '82 graduate of SUNY Oneonta, and then was 3-2, did electrical engineering at Clarkson.
Yep.
And evidently, so he could ski, but he might have been the primary motivation. And then went on to work for Hubble, NASA, work on Hubble, NASA in general, and then seems like you took a 90-degree turn.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, we'll talk through it. Yeah.
65. Okay. Well, I'm interested to hear that part. Did you get food?
No,
Did you look?
I'm not really here for food. I was here for Dr. Professor Mullenberg, but he's in here, so I just.
Okay.
Well, you're gonna have to listen to me then.
4. I feel bad now, Raheem. All right. So thank you for joining us. And I think you should be able to share your screen if you need to.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't. I was a bonehead. I didn't prepare anything as far as slides go. You know, but I'll send you some. I had some pretty cool photographs from when we were building the Hubble that I'll send on to you guys. It's pretty cool.
All right.
For the geeks, in the crowd, which is probably everybody in that room, if I had to guess.
All right. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Hugh. Speaking of the 3-2 program, I doubt these people are even alive. Hugh, back in my day, it was Mr. Truman that was running the 3-2 engineering. Was he still around when you started Oneonta, or?
No, I started in 2000.
Okay, yeah, he's probably long.
I was effectively Doug Fielder's replacement.
Okay. Dr. Fielder, Fielder, and then Mr. Robinson was the electrical engineering, the physics electrical engineering professor that we had.
Now we have a string theorist.
Yeah, Dr. Fielder took over for Mr. Truman. I don't know what year. I started in '78. I'm not sure what year the 3-2 program started. It wasn't that much more before then.
Well, that's good to know. I've had trouble tracing down some of its origins.
The history, yeah. So I started in '78, and one of the reasons why I chose Oneonta was my brother, my older brother, went there, and he eventually went on to Binghamton. God help him. I don't think I could see myself going to Binghamton. I mean, no offense to anybody that's from Binghamton, but
well, we did have one 3-2 student accepted today to Binghamton.
Okay, go for the engineering school. Yeah. Great school, really great school. Most cloudy days of any city in the entire country, like more than Seattle. But one of the other reasons I chose Oneonta, and I probably shouldn't share this with you, your young virginal years, but back in the day, drinking age was 18, and Oneonta had 52 bars. It was quite the place, back in the late '70s, early '80s. I'm sure some of those bars are still around. I haven't been up in a while. But excellent education. Hopefully Hugh and the rest of his colleagues have kept up the. Do you need to turn me up a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll wait a second. But I chose after my 3 years at Oneonta. Well, let me talk about that for a second. I wanted to do electrical engineering, more specifically computer engineering, and the least path of resistance was going through the physics program. Most of the physics credits transferred to electrical engineering. So, and, one of my favorite teachers forever was, thank you, baby. My high school physics teacher. He really got me excited about science. That really started the spark in me. I don't know if any of you guys had or gals had the same spark with a high school teacher. Really got you excited about something, but he really did. He put together these fantastic experiments in physics and really wanted me to started me down that path. I guess before the acronym STEM came about. Coming out of Oneonta, I chose Clarkson College. Great college. Well, actually, I guess it's a university now. It used to be a college when I went there. Now it's a full-fledged university. Excellent school, excellent engineering school. Again, I was talking to you before, one of the reasons I chose it, I was a big skier, and it's a little bit north of Whiteface, but probably almost every weekend we went down to Whiteface and went skiing. Other than that, the weather is horrible up there. So if you plan on going to Clarkson, get ready. You think Oneonta is bad, wait till you go up there. That cold wind coming down the St. Lawrence River is like nothing else. The other thing that was interesting is anybody thinking about going to Clarkson? Is everybody in the 3-2 engineering program, by the way? Yes, no? One? Some people thinking about it?
Yeah, we have a mix, and we have one at Clarkson now doing mechanical engineering up there.
Okay, great. Yeah, my only issue coming out of Oneonta, which was quite the back then the party school, was the sororities and the fraternities. It's I guess you could have the same thing. I guess some people can go to Syracuse now, Hugh. That was one not on our list.
Yeah,
back in the day.
we have an agreement with Syracuse that's old, but but started probably after you were here, and they tend to they do take some of our students, and some of our students have gone to master's route that way too.
Okay. Yeah, the only reason I bring it up too was the fraternity system at Clarkson made the social life a little different from what I was used to in Oneonta. So essentially, all we did was study and go watch hockey games and drink, and stay away from the fraternity parties. Yeah. But as I said, excellent school. And frankly, I was, not to brag or anything, I was a pretty good student, but I was probably better, Hugh, advertising for the program, I was probably better prepared than 90% of my classmates at engineering school that had gone through their first 2 years at engineering school. When you transfer in, you essentially transfer in as a junior. I was so much better prepared with my fundamentals, in chemistry, physics.
Why do you think that is?
I frankly don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it was all of us were in the 3-2 program at Oneonta were strivers versus, at that time, I'm embarrassing. The rich kids went straight on to engineering school at Clarkson. Us poor kids, did the first 3 years at Oneonta. When I went to Oneonta, it was $750 a semester for tuition. I don't know. That was just for tuition. I don't know what it is now. But comparatively, Clarkson was $4,000 a semester. So, it was a fairly significant difference. So I don't know if they were just, more spoiled because they were fairly smart kids. But, I think we in the 3-2 program really applied ourselves that much more and took our classes that much more seriously. I'll talk about that in a little bit when I talk about law school too. So I think that might have had something to do with it, was our background in coming in through the 3-2 program versus, going straight to engineering school. And it could be they had too much, fun times at the fraternities, could be, I don't know. Interesting observation, though. One of my classmates, actually, Hugh, I don't know if you knew this, one of my classmates went to MIT. He actually got into MIT out of the 3-2 program. Frank, and I'll leave his last name anonymous, because the guy was the, pardon my French, biggest jerk in the world. Oh my God. We had a differential equations class, and we had something happened to our professor, and he had to go back to, I believe he was from India, and his replacement, his substitute, was from India. And deepest accent I've ever heard, and he kept saying XE squared. So we were writing down X, E squared. What he really meant was X squared, but his accent gave up XE squared. Came to the midterm, I got the second highest grade. Frank got the highest grade. I had a 48 on this midterm because the guy was just, Frank had a 90 or something like that. So the professor said, I'll give you, I'll grade it on a curve, but it has to be unanimous. Guess what? Frank said no. He didn't want the professor to grade it on the curve. Needless to say, Frank was a persona non grata on any social events we had for the rest of the 3-2 program. So don't be the Frank, all right? Yeah. Okay. Clarkson was absolute great. Got out of Clarkson. I got out of there early. I got out of there in December. So instead of spending the full 2 years, I spent a year and a half. Mainly because the weather was just so bad up there. I didn't want to spend another winter in Potsdam, New York. So got out. I didn't have much luck on the job fair at Clarkson. So I didn't have a job coming out of school. So I saw this ad in a local newspaper. I went back down to Westchester. I grew up in Chappaqua, New York. For a company called Perkin-Elmer, and they were looking for actually technicians to work on the Hubble Space Telescope. I go, what the hell? Let me go up there and see what's going on. Went in for the interview, and the guy interviewing me turned out to be my boss. Says, what are you doing here? This is just for technicians. I go, I know, I just came up here. All right, let's schedule a real interview for you, and came back the next week and got hired by Perkin-Elmer. So Perkin-Elmer, we built the actual optical telescope assembly for the Hubble Space Telescope. And that's probably one of the reasons you asked me to come. Really exciting project, to say the least. Hopefully some of you guys remember the Hubble. It hasn't been that long. It's actually still operational. We got this new kid on the block called the Webb, but the Hubble was the pioneer. So I actually got a job with the thermal vacuum group at Perkin-Elmer, and which is a little bit ironic because the only C I ever got in college, either Oneonta or Clarkson, was in thermodynamics. I don't know if you guys haven't gotten that far yet, but PV equals nRT. That's the only thing you'll remember from thermodynamics you ever go into it. But it's just a little bit ironic. I got a job with that group. But my job was when we put the pieces of the telescope in for testing. You have to do it under vacuum conditions, to simulate outer space. Was controlling the temperature. We cooled it down with liquid nitrogen, and keeping the temperature, as close to space as we could to keep the vacuum. Took some interesting control, and let me age myself a little bit more. I did the data collection and control with an Apple II personal computer, 64K of memory. Yeah, I see you shaking your head in the back there. It's like, yeah, okay. I just laugh when people say, the size of these programs now, megabytes. My Adobe on my computer here takes up, 64 megabytes of memory for the program. I just laugh at it. Programmed in assembly language. I don't know if you guys have taken assembly language yet, but highly recommend it. I mean, fundamentals. You really learn how the computer works by programming in assembly language. At least starting out, you won't end up doing it forever. Pretty cool job. Needless to say, in the thermal vacuum group, I'll get a little geeky on you here. One of the big things, because it was optics on the Space Telescope, we had to keep the mirrors and all the lenses as clean as possible. So what we'd have to do, everything that was going to go onto the spacecraft had to be what they call outgassed. So we had to, like cables, all the cables, all the I forget what kind of plastic it was, essentially around all of the cabling, had to be put into the vacuum chamber and outgassed. So all of the solvents and everything else on the piece of equipment had to be, outgassing. I mean, that's what it comes from. And, the gas goes out of the thing. So we did that. I did that for many, many weeks. So on a lot of times third shift, because getting the thing under a vac, getting the chamber under the vacuum. So the smallest chamber that we did a lot at that in is about a quarter of the size your room in, the room you guys are in. And keeping, it takes a while to get that thing down to vacuum. And so we had lots of hours sitting alone, looking at the screen, and to amuse ourselves, we'd freeze each other's lunch with liquid nitrogen. If you ever get bored, liquid nitrogen is fun to play with. Be careful, but if you ever get a chance, it's interesting to say the least. So does anybody know about, and the old guys in the back, I could probably tell, remember the story about how the optics on the Hubble were originally screwed up. Yeah, that was us. Yeah, okay, you're shaking your head too. That was us. That was PerkinElmer. We screwed it up, I'm not giving away secrets here. It was actually a calibration on a test instrument and it messed up by angstroms. I mean, literally, it was angstroms that it was off on. Not to offend anybody in the room, but we used to call them RCHs. And if you don't know what that is, you can ask one of the old guys what an RCH is. We could have corrected it. We could have caught it while it was still on the ground by doing what they call a throughput test out at Lockheed when we shipped out to Lockheed. But that test would have cost $250,000, and they didn't want to do it. They saved that $250,000, and God knows how many millions, tens of millions they ended up spending doing the, as I call them, the eyeglasses and all these other trips. But thank God it eventually did get working. So after we finished assembling the OTA in Danbury, Connecticut, it got shipped out to Sunnyvale, California, out to Lockheed for final integration. And they said, does anybody want to, go to California? And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good deal to me. So I was part of the West Coast field office for PerkinElmer in the final integration out there. It was probably about 12 of us working on that final integration from PerkinElmer. Most unbelievable experience of my life. I don't regret one minute of any of my choices because it led to that. Working with some of the best engineers and some of the best scientists in the world, from JPL and European Space Agency. It's an old joke back in the Apollo days. It's built with 250,000 of the lowest bidders. They're going up in these rockets. The integration using, there was about 7 major groups with major components putting this thing together. And the communication beforehand, before we get out to final integration, led to some difficulties if you're just doing things on paper. And, I guess now we could have done some things by Zoom, but we, in the pardon my French if I offend anybody, in the ass end of the telescope is where the scientific instruments went. So that was one of the big things about the Hubble, is that they could send up a new scientific instrument and the astronauts could change them out as technology advanced. So we specified, how big that space is in the back end of the telescope, and they had theirs. So they went out all the way to the end, and we went out. So the first science instrument we went to put in, it wouldn't fit. So we had to go and all they did was fill it out with filler to fill up the space. If we had all been together and talking about it, we might have caught that kind of error. But those kind of things happen in this integration process. The other cool thing was I got, speaking of that, I got to work with a couple of the astronauts, the guys that were doing the initial launch and initial deployment, came and said, all right, no, I need a handle here. I need a handle there, because the guys who had already done spacewalks, it's like they knew how they could maneuver in space. It's like, no, you got to make that, that essentially that screw head a lot bigger, so we can use this tool to tighten things down, or it's got to be on this side instead of that side. So, those kind of things, as I said, was unbelievable and irreplaceable memories. We were the next ride on the space shuttle when the Challenger blew up. Talk about horrible days, and the guys from NASA, actually the guys we were working with were from Huntsville, Alabama, not Goddard. They eventually, all the operations, how they ran the telescope was run out of Goddard up in Maryland. But we were with the guys out of Huntsville, Alabama, as we used to call it, Hunts Patch. I got to go down there a couple of times. It's an interesting place. Talk about guys that were devastated that day. The guys from NASA, as we were all devastated that day. The biggest problem for us, other than the tragedy, is we didn't know when the program would get back on track again, because we were only designed to go into the space shuttle. Well, let me tell you another little side story, a little interesting side story. I don't think I told you about this. One of the reasons Perkin-Elmer was picked to build the optical telescope assembly, because we were partners with Lockheed building spy satellites. So half of my job, actually, when I was working on the telescope, was also working on the spy satellites. And I don't have to kill any of you because this has all been declassified. It's a couple of years down the road. Really cool program. So the satellite we built was essentially about the same size as the Hubble is, and we had I think it was half a dozen cameras in this satellite with film. So as we're doing our orbits over and worked with the Christians in America, as we used to call them, the CIA guys, as far as our targeting goes, where we would expose the film. So we exposed the film, we got to the end of a reel in one of the cameras, we would eject it out. This is cool, talk about geeky. We would eject it out of the satellite. It would do this orbit, it would finally come down into the Earth's atmosphere. The Air Force was running a C-130 cargo plane with this huge V-shaped net out of the back of the airplane, and would catch the canister of film. And we did it over the ocean in case we missed it. We go into the ocean. So this is back the battle Soviet days. So if we missed it, it would go into the bottom of the ocean, and the Soviets could never catch our, never recover our photographs. But I digress. That's a pretty cool story, though. If you want to do geeky stuff, there's also the Department of Defense. If you ever want to go into some engineering for the federal government, all of those satellites we were designed to go up on the Titan rockets. We couldn't put the Hubble Space Telescope on the Titan because it would just shake and literally the Hubble would fall apart. So we had to wait till the shuttle got back on track. And at that point, we didn't even know it, because these astronauts died. There was a lot of opposition to even restarting the shuttle program again. So at that point, I had a choice. Do I stick around? And they offered to keep me on. Do I stick around and see what happens? And at that point, IBM actually offered me a job working in a facility called the Blue Cube up in Sunnyvale, California. It's where the U.S. government flew all of this. It's old now. It's been replaced. I don't know where their new facility is, but it flew all of their spy satellites. It was about 15 or so, and if I told you about some of them, I would have to kill you because some are actually still in operation. But the reason they hired me is because they had the extended security clearance. So at that point at IBM, so I worked for IBM for 3 years in that, and I always had it in the back of my mind to go to law school. I don't know why. Since when I was a little kid, I always wanted to go to law school, and I got interested in the engineering. One thing that drove me that way was at that point in time, at least in IBM and most other big corporations, the engineers would cap out salary-wise, advancement-wise. If you wanted to go any place in the corporation, you had to go on to the management side. And I mean, it was a significant difference. What you could make and how far you could advance in the company if you stayed on the engineering side or went into the management side. So I kind of saw that as it's like, do I want to top out? I'm looking at some of my managers at IBM, and it's like, has he really advanced any farther than I'm going to advance myself? I mean, today it's a whole different ballgame, completely
Nice.
Totally different, completely ballgame. Now the engineers rule the world, versus the managers rule the world. And before you say, oh, this is Mr. Scheer, what a smart guy, he's doing all these smart things. I was in the middle of Silicon Valley in the 1980s when the internet started happening, and I didn't recognize it, and I didn't jump on that bandwagon. It was like, I'm smart, but unfortunately, I wasn't that smart. So probably some advice I'd have for you guys: don't necessarily get tied to a corporation. If you see something you want to do, and it's on your own, go for it. I mean, go for it. Don't feel like you have to tie yourself to that pension. You got to get down the road, or if you have your own ideas, excuse me, explore them. See if you can get some friends together and explore them. There's enough stories these days about people in their garages started all these things. So I started law school at the University of Santa Clara, out in Santa Clara, California. Started at night, working at IBM during the day. Then I got into IBM's training program for IP attorneys, more specifically for patent attorneys, and transferred back to Washington, D.C., went to George Washington, graduated George Washington again at night. So it took 4 years at night, working during the day. Worked again, pardon my French, worked my ass off, to say the least. There was a long 4 years. First 2 years of when I was working as an engineer, and then in the training program at IBM, it was a full 8-hour day before I'd go off to law school at night, getting home at 10 o'clock at night, and then studying all weekend. And about halfway through GW is when we had our first daughter, our first child, our daughter. So, I mean, what the hell, in for a penny, in for a pound, go for it. But it was a lot of hard work, but really in the end, I think paid off. So I graduated law school in 1991. Started working for IBM as a site counsel. Started working up in Kingston, New York, and I think they have since closed down Kingston. It's back when IBM used to build mainframes. I don't even know if they still build mainframes at all. I think they do, but what they figured out is a mainframe can actually be a big ass server. I think the only people still using mainframes are like insurance companies. So I think they closed Kingston and moved it down to Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie, I believe, is still operating. Definitely enjoyed that time, but my wife refused to move to upstate New York. She didn't want to live in Kingston, New York. And frankly, I don't blame her. So I was commuting from Chappaqua in Westchester County up to Kingston, 90 miles each way every day. So that lasted about a year and a half. I couldn't take it anymore. So looked to turn around and do the commute down into the city. So I started working the law firm thing down in the city in 1993. So I've been in private practice doing patent law for close to almost 30 plus years now at this point in time. I love patent law. People think the patent lawyers are geekies. Yeah, okay, we are geeky, but we keep the tax guys around to make us look exciting. But literally every day, one of the reasons I like patent law is I do something technical every day. Virtually by definition, I'm working on something new. If it's not new, it's not patentable. So people, companies come to me with their new inventions, and it's been a lot of fun. And if it wasn't for the technical aspect of it, what I learned back in Oneonta, what I learned in Clarkson, I keep refining and keep learning. And one of the fun things is keeping on learning. You have to keep up with this new technology. I'm starting to do a lot of stuff in AI now. Incredibly fascinating. I wouldn't be a lawyer. I wouldn't do tax law. I wouldn't do litigation. I wouldn't do any other kind of law. It's the technical thing that has kept me interested all these 30 plus years. I went to work for what they call big law. Did the big law thing for 2 decades almost, and then a couple of years ago they raised my billing rate to $1,100 an hour, and it's like, oh my God, and a lot of my clients are a little bit smaller, and conflicts with other big clients at the firm became a problem. So I decided to go out on my own. So I've been on my own for 5 years now, 6 years now, and loving life. I'm at that age too where I can pick my own clients and pick my own hours and work at my own leisure. Thinking about perhaps teaching at some point in time. I don't know whether law or on the science side. Probably on the law side. Pepperdine is not too far from here. I could cruise down over to Malibu and teach a class or two down at Pepperdine, and we'll see what happens with that. But that's my story. I hope you found something interesting, something inspiring. Hopefully that there is a career out here. There's actually many careers. I mean, you guys are just at the beginning, and frankly, the 3-2, the liberal arts degree you're going to get from Oneonta and the engineering degree will open so many doors for you. It really will open so many doors for you. Some of you might want to go into finance down on Wall Street. They're always dying for smart guys, and gals like you guys, and that might attract you. 20/20 hindsight. Maybe I should have gone and done that, but I think that would have bored the hell out of me. I don't know. Making boatloads of money might have been nice, but I can't. I can't complain. I've had a comfortable career. But there's so many doors open for you guys with the 3-2 program. I really could not more highly recommend it to anybody. Anybody I'm talking to, they're having kids thinking about it, particularly if they have the science engineering bent. I tell them, please investigate this program. It is so worth it. It is so worth it. So, anybody have any questions for me?
Well, I know we're. I know there are several professors here who have a half dozen questions each, but we're going to start with Nate. And Nate, by the way, was the one who was just accepted to Binghamton for mechanical engineering.
Congratulations. Excellent. Excellent. So you start in the fall?
Yep.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Mine's more of a general comment. It's sort of, I agree with you with the 3-2 program, how it really does open a lot of doors. And like you're saying, you went in for this physics and engineering, but you weren't locked into that. You went in as a technician, you went in as a patent lawyer. It's just, there's so much variety with this program that I really think it is one of the more valuable ones.
No,
So
absolutely. And you know, not to get too practical, but cost effectiveness. I mean, back in my day, you know, if you're going to Binghamton, you're not going to be paying that much, you know, but if you're, going to Syracuse or RPI or one of the other private schools, you know, going through the 3-2 program saved you a boatload of money. And as I said, you know, the professors at Oneonta prepared me just as well, if not better, than the private school professors did. So, if nothing from an economic point of view, it was an excellent value.
I agree wholeheartedly. Like, I live in Oneonta myself, so it's like a 5-minute drive up here, and it's just extremely cost effective.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's funny, when I was another anecdote from law school. So I went to law school at night, and back then the patent office was in Crystal City, and that's where I don't know if you guys are familiar with the DC area. It's right below the Pentagon, and that's where the U.S. Patent Office used to be. They moved down to Alexandria. So that we had our offices in Crystal City. So we commute in from, do our 8 hours at Crystal City at IBM, and then commute into the city to GW to go to school at night. So all of our classes were at night. So there was a couple classes where we had a bunch of day students in the class with us. Excuse me. And the nights when the law school professor wouldn't show up, you could tell the day students, they're like, yeah, he's not here. And all the night students that were mostly paying for it themselves, God damn it, when are we going to make this class up? I want my money back. Yes, next.
I was wondering, we'll get to we're going to have a Hubble sequence in a minute. So
Sure.
I was wondering, so, a lot of our students leave here and they're not sure what they're going to do. They're not sure how to proceed, but sometimes they're also looking for the perfect thing. So tell us a little bit about, you accepted a technician job. It was, that you could have been worried you were going to get trapped in, but yet it opened doors. So how did you feel about it going into it?
Yeah, actually, I didn't explain that well enough. They were advertising for technician jobs. So they were looking for guys with like AA or an electronics degree or something like that. And as I said, my eventual boss looked at my resume, and he was the first guy I was talking to at this job fair. And he goes, "What the hell are you doing here? You have an engineering degree. Why are you applying for this job?" I go, "I really wasn't applying for this job. I was looking to talk to somebody like you." So they actually created my job as an engineer after that interview. So don't be afraid to knock on doors. Don't be afraid to go talk to somebody. It's like, don't be afraid of rejection. Don't, if you see something, it's like, oh my God, I want to work on the Hubble Space Telescope. But at that point, they didn't have any engineering jobs open up. So I just went up there on a lark, hoping, I could weasel my way into the boss's door, and I did. And they said, all right. So I think my salary that first year, this is 1983, because I graduated in 82. This is 83, spring of 82. My salary was $25,000, and I was happy as a pig in shit. It's like, oh my God, $25,000. I'm living like a king. And I was, because they were paying the technicians, $15,000, $17,000, and they're going to pay me $25,000.
Well, I graduated in 86, and all of my friends that were going into finance positions started at 25. Some of them were excited to get 27.
Yeah.
I started in high school at 12. But all right.
All right, you're dating yourself. All right. You old codger, you.
I'll do that a few times here. I'm not the oldest person in the room. Other questions? Dr. Nolenberg.
I was just curious, was the Nancy Grace Roman telescope that's going up in the near future, was that also designed by Perkins?
I think I think they're totally out of the optics business at this point. I think they're the only thing close to it is they're still doing lithography. The optics in lithography machines. The facility I worked in, sold to Raytheon, and they eventually got bought by Northrop, and I don't know. I think it's just one big ass defense contractor now at this point in time. But as far as I know, they don't do anything in the telescope field whatsoever. I think at that point, after the spy satellites and the Hubble, that was pretty much it.
Gotcha.
Tim?
Yes, sir.
Mike, it's Tim Hayes. How are you?
All right, Tim. How are you? Oh, Tim. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
I'm sorry I was late. I had a long walk across campus, but I want to throw a softball question your way.
Sure.
When I talk with other alumni, especially ones that are working in illustrious organizations or on really cool projects, they sometimes have an imposter syndrome. I just went to Oneonta. I only went to Oneonta, but they're capable of doing the work. Or that imposter syndrome is forced upon them by people who went to other, the name brand schools and things like that. Did you ever experience that in your career, or would you have advice for people who, are fearful that might happen?
Yeah. My gut advice is tell them to shove it. Some of the worst. I'm going more towards the. I never had that on the engineering side. I went to MIT. I went to Caltech. I never really had that. Well, plus on the engineering side, I'm coming out of Clarkson, which was pretty at least on the East Coast, a very well-known brand. But more on the law school side, frankly, some of the worst lawyers I've ever dealt with were the Harvard grads. I mean, literally, they didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. No offense intended, but and the worst attitudes. And frankly, those most of them are the ones that washed out, because of the attitude. Versus, and as I was saying before, I don't know whether you heard it, Tim. Why I said I was telling you why I thought I was more well prepared than the folks that started at Clarkson that spent their first 2 years. And I think part of it, at least for myself, was I was a striver. I think the most my dad ever made, when he retired was $32,000. So we were, middle class, for Westchester, lower middle class, but we were strivers. I mean, we really, we knew how to work hard, and we knew how to work hard for whatever we got. And I think that really held throughout my career. And I think a lot of the 3-2 program folks also have that same ambition. They really are willing to put work hard, and that'll get you so much farther than having that Harvard degree, having that Yale degree, having that that Caltech degree. So I've heard about that imposter thing. I've never felt any. I hate to even use the word ashamed. I went to Oneonta. You know what? Let me take that back. In Westchester, in Chappaqua, I don't know, it's pretty Tony. I don't know if you guys know Chappaqua at all. It's pretty Tony. My dad was the receiver of taxes. That's how we were we were able to stay there. My dad actually was born in Chappaqua, so we were kind of legacy. But when we were having kids, I moved after law school, moved back to Chappaqua again, and we made a bunch of friends, and most of them worked in either law firms or finance in Manhattan, because it was, it's a bedroom community. So everybody commuted in, commuted back out. So we made this circle of friends, and one night we were at a party, and one of my wife's good friends, I became friends with her husband. He was a neurosurgeon, and he went to SUNY Stony Brook, So he was laughing. We're having, you know, drinking some scotch and smoking some cigars, and we're, you know, just pontificating about, you know, the mysteries of life. He goes, you know, look at us. We're, you know, we're the two SUNY graduates, and we're the most successful ones in this room. And I was like, you know what, you're right. You know, you're absolutely right. You know, so I don't think I ever really felt that imposter thing. I never felt any inferiority whatsoever. I was certainly never ashamed of going to Oneonta. Hell, I had some of the best times. That was the best 3 years of my life, I have to say. You know, in Oneonta, and you know, frankly, made friendships. You know, to this day. I'm still good friends with, you know, 3 out of the 4 of my my college roommates, you know, 40 years later. So absolutely no regrets whatsoever. So please tell anybody if they should not have any hesitation whatsoever about joining, you know, going to a state school. It's no regrets whatsoever.
Thanks, Mike.
No, absolutely. I'm wondering if the young lady has any questions over there. Not to put you on the spot.
Come on, Natalie.
Come on. What's your major? What are you majoring in?
I'm a physics major.
Yay! Yay! Excellent. Excellent. Anybody not a physics major?
Tim, yeah.
Yeah, physics is the most fun. I don't know. You know, my wife always gives me a hard time when she's showing off, you know, to new friends we made. It's like, yeah, this is my husband who, you know, got a degree in physics for fun. It's like, yeah, it was fun. You know, you should have fun while you're in school. You know, we didn't necessarily get to blow up stuff. And when you get up to mechanical engineering, you'll probably get to blow up some stuff at some point. Yeah, at the chemical guys, they got to blow some stuff up. I don't know if they still let them have those access to those kind of chemicals these days, but you know, the old guys in the back, and you'll remember. Yeah, I guess part of it when we were kids, we had the chemistry sets. And literally, I think they had boric acid in these chemistry sets for 10-year-olds. Yeah. Yeah, right. You don't remember those. And the erector sets were, you know, with these sharp edges, you could, you know, take out a jugular vein. You know, they don't trust kids these days.
Well, with those chemistry sets, it might be a good idea because everybody did their little PhD test and then they just started to pour stuff together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since we're waiting for more questions, but I'm wondering what it was like at Perkin-Elmer when first light happened with Hubble and they first realized they had a problem. What was the culture?
Yeah. At that point, I mean, because that's 4 years after I left Perkin-Elmer, but I was still friends with a bunch of folks. I mean, and we're like, oh my God, what happened? And then retracing the steps to see how it happened. And literally they were able to trace it. Actually, the room where I had the that small thermal vacuum chamber was the polishing room. And you know, so that's where the mistake happened. And literally it was the calibration on a test instrument. And I mean, you guys are down to it now. I mean, it literally came down to angstroms. It really came down to angstroms. It was off. And there's no way, unless we did that throughput test. I mean, it was pretty cool. Back out at Lockheed, if you could believe it or not, the Hubble went into this vacuum chamber that dwarfed the size of the Hubble. This vacuum chamber is so huge because they have a lot bigger satellites they put into this thing. That throughput test would have been done in that chamber. And as I said, you know, would have cost an extra $250,000, but the program director at NASA said, no, you know, we're budgeted tight. We're going to have to cut someplace, that's one place we trust you. And that would have caught it. That would have caught it. But it's hard to second guess. And there's no other way it would have been caught on the ground. No other way physical test to be able to catch it on the ground. It was so infinitesimally small.
Do I recall correctly? They figured it out pretty fast. I mean,
they figured it out. Yeah. They figured out. Well, they figured out the anomaly immediately. It's like these pictures are blurry. What the hell's going on? And they traced it back to this test instrument. And God bless the guys that figured out I call it a pair of glasses that figured out how to correct it. And even more, thank the lucky stars that it worked. Because otherwise we would have had a piece of junk up there. So one of the other things they were working on, one of the big ones, I think it was we called it the WIFPIC, the Wide Field Planetary Camera. I think that was the ESA guys. I think they were the guys that first noticed it, and they thought it was their instrument. And we started doing some other tests. It's like, no, shit, it's the primary mirror. I don't know how they narrowed it down from the primary to the secondary mirror, whatever, but they figured I was the primary mirror. So the other thing they were going to do was just put glasses on each. I think there's 4 different bays where they had the different signed instruments. So they were going to put these lenses on the 4 different bays, but that really didn't. That was going to be a real pain in the ass. So they ended up putting it up in the main beam of the light. So it was cool. It was such a cool project to work on.
We have, so when you ask whether these guys and gals know about Hubble, we do have an alum from 2017, who's working on the James Webb Space Telescope. And he came back and gave a talk, but one of the most interesting things was he would do side-by-sides of James Webb and Hubble. And I'm messing this up, but essentially trying to work out a calibration so that you can look out a time history.
Right.
That's a butchering, but it's,
Short and sweet.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around time-space continuum. I don't know. Dr. Fielder, told all that black hole quantum stuff. I still don't understand that crap. Yeah.
And did you must have known Dr. James also?
Yes, absolutely.
And Mr. Reed.
Yep, absolutely. Wow. Wow, you bring it back. I haven't thought of those names in 40 years. Wow.
And I'm sorry to tell you that they've all passed in the last 4 years. I think.
It's not surprising. Say they were all, well, I was young, but they would all seem old then. They were old. Mr. Robinson was really old. Yeah.
Dr. French is with us, and he spent considerable time with Dr. James in overlap. So, Daniel, go ahead.
How's the transition to working in the law firm or law?
It was interesting. Doing the law school for 4 years kind of prepared me, and then this training program with IBM. So it was in Crystal City where the patent office was. So essentially what they were doing for that entire 2 years was training me to be a corporate lawyer, the IP aspect of a corporate lawyer. So I had 2 years to train. So it wasn't like I'm an engineer, I'm a lawyer, night and day kind of thing. So I had 2 years to transition into it. And frankly, because of the patent aspect, back then, when I started out as an associate, or as a punk, in-house at IBM, literally half our day was talking about technical issues. is like, you know, I'd go out and visit, meet with, particularly up at IBM. I had some, the power group was under me. So they used to have the different cores for, you know, with the windings and all that kind of stuff. It's like, so I had that one class, you know, that one, you know, week in one class of study. So I had to go back and study that. But, you know, I had these, you know, these engineers and attorneys at IBM have been doing this for decades, and, you know, so they could explain it. So half of my day was talking about technical stuff. So that transition was actually fairly smooth for me. You know, I think mainly because of the IBM training program. Going cold from well, see, because there aren't many schools that have the night school that you really want to go to. GW is one of the best, has one of the best patent programs in the world. So a lot of people, you know, if they're engineers and want to go into law, you know, quit the engineering and go to law school full time for 3 years, and then start at the law firm. So that I don't know. That didn't appeal to me. I couldn't afford it, first of all. But just quitting my day job, you know, that just wasn't part of my constitution. So that's why I kept the day job and went at night. I was lucky enough to, as I said, get into this program, and one of the best schools in the country, GW, had a night program. So I lucked out. So. But if you're ever thinking about it, give me a call. You know, get my number from Hugh and give me a call. And if any of you ever come up with inventions and you want to, you know, talk through something, I'll teach you how to search. You know, search yourself, search for it, see if anything's out there. You know, find essentially. Well, this is all right. Here's an interesting point. One of the most interesting thing up at engineering school was they start you in freshman year. So I came in as a junior. They start you in freshman year writing an essay, literally, you know, 5-6 paragraphs, what I did last summer kind of things. There were kids that come senior year, you know, spring semester, still could not write a coherent essay, you know, engineers that still could not write a coherent essay, what I did last summer, or you know, my favorite things about engineering. They really could not. You'll probably see it yourselves. Hopefully you guys are the exception, you know, but the humanities is lost on a lot of engineers. And that's one thing a patent attorney does, is translate geekdom as I was taught, and I try and teach all the associates I work with. You're writing this, the patent description itself is one of the most, I think, one of the most complicated in the world. The biggest complication is, at some point, that's going to be in front of a jury. You got to think of it as, my mother is going to be on a jury. So at one level, you have to explain that invention so your mother will understand it. And at another level, you have to explain it so the PhD will understand it and be able to make and use that invention. So that's one thing. I was always fairly creative as far as my writing goes, and that really, you know, did me well, you know, in the transition from engineer to attorney. So writing skills. I don't know. Do they have anything in Oneonta as far as that kind of prerequisite for getting the hell out of there? Is some sort of writing program?
So they have to take a composition course, and we just added a graduation requirement for a second writing course.
Okay, good.
Have to do intermediate and advanced labs with require you to write lab
Yep,
reports.
and intermediate and advanced labs here are geared toward writing technical reports. So.
Good. That's a good thing, because I don't think we had that in Oneonta when I was there. If I remember correctly, I did. I mean, we had to do lab reports and stuff, but nothing really formal as far as writing composition goes. So I'm glad to hear that. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think we could, I know they've heard me say it before, but that, because I was someone who didn't like to write papers in college. And I couldn't wait for it to be over. When I
Yep.
graduated, I'd never have to write again.
Yeah, right.
So the more you work on it, the better it is for you, and better to realize that it's going to be with you always.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And just like in mathematics and quantitative analysis, if you can write, it sets you apart. And I can write better, but I still give everything to Dr. French. He gives it back to me.
With the red pen, right? Yeah.
Other questions? All right, with that, I want to thank our speaker for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being such a wonderful audience.
I forgot about the time difference, but I don't know, for some reason, I thought you were down in the city.
Yeah, no. I would have come up there if that was the case. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah, he is in A City, yeah. Well, thanks again, Michael. Really.
Oh, beautiful.
And
Yeah, if anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free. You can give out my email address, or anybody that's watching this later on. Please feel free.
Will do. A little while back, I think there's a publication, maybe it was in Physics Today, was an article on transitioning towards patent law.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Hanging on a bulletin board across the hall, but I might actually send you a copy and ask you what you think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please do. Please do. Oh, yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, how many girls are there in the program? Probably about the same as when I went through, huh?
Well, I would say we were, well,
Just have one for.
yeah. Yeah, so
Girl power.
right now, maybe one.
One, okay, yeah. My daughter I couldn't get her into the engineering. She went the biology route, so she did get a hard science. But unfortunately, guys, it gets worse at engineering school. I think there was 106 kids in my electrical engineering section, electrical, mechanical, civil. There were 2 girls out of the 106. Yeah, it was not good. Luckily, we did have a management school at Clarkson, so that's where we got our dates from, was from the management school. So.
Well, we'd like for it to improve. I think roughly about 7 years ago, we hit a peak of maybe 15%.
Okay.
And maybe even 20%. And we have some outstanding young women. We have a senior researcher at Los Alamos, is a young woman who's an alum.
Excellent.
Another one is finishing up her PhD at Yale. Very strong. We have another one at the University of New Hampshire finishing up a PhD in ocean engineering. We have one young woman up in Albany working for an engineering firm. Another one up at RPI in 3-2. Another one who went from a company XOS to a company in the Boston area. One teaching in New York City.
And Abby went to Clarkson, didn't
And
she?
Abby went to Clarkson to do civil engineering. So she
Okay.
just finished. So,
So you have to be an ambassador. Yeah, I'm pointing at you. Yeah. Yeah, I never understood it because they all, the girls all excelled at math and really dominated the math fields. But it didn't, I know the engineering just never excited them about, I don't know what the difference is between math, because how much of engineering is mathematics? My goodness, I got a minor. You'll all end up with minors in mathematics, whether you guys like it or not.
yeah. Yeah, it's something we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, either do. If I think of anything, I'll let you know. Yeah. So.
Yep, makes my heart a little heavy. Not that I don't appreciate the afterthought. All right, Mike, thank you for your time.
Absolutely, guys. All right. The best of luck to all of you.
And stay in touch.
All right. Take care.
So who writes our test then? What? You.
What's your
Who
question?
writes our tests? Me.
I write your test.
That's.
Yeah, Mike keeps saying that, but